All right, let's talk about some more Stoicism. I tried this time to not have my overhead lamp on, but I have a lamp on there. Now you may see lines through the screen because of the frequency of that light, and that is the wavelength. But anyway, what I wanted to do today, of course, we're going to continue with Marcus Aurelius and the Meditations. I wanted to skip forward a little bit in Book 8, because this is a specific section that I always find very interesting. One that we easily forget about, but that once we are reminded of this, I always think that that leads to very positive thoughts and very positive insights. So let's look at this one. Section 49. Do not elaborate to yourself beyond what your initial impressions report. You've been told that so-and-so is maligning you. That is the report. You've not been told that you are harmed. I see that my little boy is ill. That is what I see. I do not see that he is in danger. So always stay like this within your first impressions, and do not add conclusions from your own thoughts. And then that is all. Or rather, you can add the conclusion of one acquainted with all that happens in the world. I always think this is a very, very powerful statement, and again, one that we easily forget about. This is also one of those statements you have to be a little careful in how you interpret them, so I'm going to do my best. This is the way I look at this. First of all, first impressions, an important concept in Stoicism. Something comes in, right? A sensation, something happens to you, there's an immediate first impression. But a first impression is just that. It's a first impression. You have the opportunity to step back. In modern psychological parlance, we would say, cognitively distance yourself. And then say, what am I really feeling? What am I really experiencing? Now, we've talked about that before in the context of emotions. I have found it very helpful to deal with things like flashes of anger, flashes of frustration. You experience that, something happens, you get this frustrating sensation or a flash of anger, but then you can take a deep breath. You can take a step back from that first impression. However, it's not necessarily emotion, I think, that Marcus Aurelius is talking about here, but the consequence of these things can be emotional. Okay, so what is he trying to say? The way I look at this is what he's saying is that you should stick to the facts. Stick to what you know. Rational emotive behavioral therapy is based largely on these kinds of principles. Cognitive behavioral therapy is based largely on these kinds of principles. It starts off with the premise that we've seen many times. It's not the things that bother you, but it's your thoughts about those things. Okay? But beyond that, where do these thoughts come from? Standard example. You lose your job and it is terrible. I've used that example before, but I'll just keep using it because I think it's so smooth. You lose your job and this is terrible. Now I don't have an income. Now I don't have this. I don't have that. But that's not the fact. This is your interpretation of that first impression. The fact is you have lost your job. Nobody's going to say, and that's fantastic. What a happy occasion. No, that's a different issue, right? But it is your brain, it is your thoughts that attach onto that first impression. Marcus's examples are clear. You've been told that so-and-so is maligning you. That is the report. You have not been told that you are harmed, because that is your interpretation. I once saw an interview with the always incredibly fascinating, intimidating and terrifying Marco Pierre White. Marco Pierre White, MPW, if you're not familiar with him, was a chef, the youngest chef in the UK to get 3 Michelin stars, the highest rating possible. And he was the master of Gordon Ramsay. Now, if you think Gordon Ramsay is terrifying, he's a schoolboy compared to Marco Pierre White, because Marco Pierre White stays calm. And that makes his anger terrifying. But what's interesting about Marco Pierre White, a very interesting life story. What's his autobiography? I think it's called The Devil in the Kitchen. Whatever. Marco Pierre White's autobiography is a great read. I saw this interview with him. And there is a legend that in the kitchen, Marco Pierre White made Gordon Ramsay cry. And when the interviewer asked him about it, Marco gave a very stoic answer. He said, "No, I didn't make Gordon Ramsay cry. He made himself cry." Now, your first response, if you're like me, your first response is, "No, come on, that's nonsense. I mean, you did something to aggravate him." But at the end of the day, it wasn't Marco Pierre White crying. It was Gordon Ramsay. Now, pay very close attention to what I'm saying. This is not some sort of excuse for bullying. This is not what I'm saying, right? You cannot say, "Oh, well, I beat him up. It's your fault that you're in pain." That's not how this works. But think of the principle. You choose how you respond to a given situation. And there are situations that will make you cry. There are situations that make you angry. There are situations that make you frustrated. But at the end of the day, you choose. You get a first impression. You're fired. But the next conclusion, "And that is terrible, and that is dreadful, and I am worthless. Why does this always happen to me? I'm the one who always suffers." All of this is you. Not the fact, but your interpretation. It's not an accusation, but really think about it. That's you, and it's on you. And this comes back to, you can't necessarily change your situation, but you can change the way you think about that situation. And in my mind, that is one of the, if not the most powerful things to have come out of Stoicism. You can change your thoughts. So this is something you can practice in everyday life. End the thoughts. End the interpretation. At the very least, take a step back and think about what you are thinking and what your interpretation of whatever is going on is contributing to the situation. And there's a good chance that if you feel bad about a certain situation, I'm not saying you shouldn't, I'm not saying it's not a situation that should make you feel bad, I'm not saying that it's not a terrible situation, but it starts, the feelings start with an interpretation. A judgment that you add on top of the fact. I lost my job and it's terrible. This person, whatever, never wants to talk to me again, and that's just dreadful. But that's not the fact. The fact is that the person doesn't want to talk to you anymore. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. You won't know until a certain amount of time has passed. And then you will know if it was good or bad. Maybe you will never know if it was good or bad. Maybe it just is. Because the good or the bad is again an interpretation. And good interpretations we are never bothered by. Nobody's ever complained about being too happy. But there are people who complain about being too sad, too anxious, too etc. Now, I'm not talking about clinical depression and anxiety. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about everyday things. Everyday setbacks and anxieties. I went to the grocery store and they were out of whipped cream. And that's just a tragedy. Not to mention a travesty. Is it? Or is the fact that the grocery store was just out of whipped cream and you have made it a tragedy because you could go to another grocery store? These are a lot of examples, but I really urge you to try this out. when you feel bad, and to a degree when you feel good, but again, nobody ever complains about feeling too happy. When you feel bad about something, ask yourself what you have done. How are you analyzing this? How are you processing this in your mind? And if the answer is X happened, and that is terrible, horrible, unbearable, incredible, it always happens to me. Why doesn't this happen to anyone else? End it right there. Step back. X has happened, period. I may not like it. That's fair to say. I may not like it. All else being equal, I'd rather not have had X happen. All else being equal, I would have preferred Y to X. But I don't have Y. I have X. So now, what I'm going to do is, to the best of my abilities, try and work through X. If I lost my job, I can try to find another job. Getting a job is not within my control, but looking for a job is. Locus of control. Epictetus and Enchiridion, chapter 1. Some things are within your control, other things are not within your control. What happens in there is within your control. May not always be easy. May spiral out of control. May have a tendency to become unpleasant. But then it's time to reanalyze your thoughts. I'm not saying it's easy. And again, I'm not saying that there are not certain things that truly are unpleasant. Of course, there are things that truly are unpleasant. And no Stoic would say, well, yeah, then you just have to be happy and dance around and pretend like there's nothing going on. That's not what Stoicism is about. But Stoicism is about that small measure of peace. And that small measure of peace is within your reach. But you have to go out and get it. And in my mind, a very good start is sticking to the facts. What do I truly know? And is it in accordance, if you want to use Stoic terms, is it in accordance with the universe? I lost my job. Well, that could be in accordance with the universe. It is. And it is terrible. But that's not in accordance with the universe. That's what I've tacked onto that. I have done this. And because I have done this, I can undo this. I have lost my job. I would have preferred to not lose my job. But now I have an opportunity to find another job. It may not be easy to find another job. I may struggle to find another job. But this is the reality, and that is fully in line with the universe. It's just the way things are. And I think that kind of reasoning can make things easier. Easier. Not easy. Easier. It's an important distinction. So try it. Learn to cognitively distance yourself from the interpretations. Be very mindful of how you interpret things and what judgments, what evaluations you use to analyze certain things. Stick to the facts. Remember, it's not about not feeling. It's not about not being allowed to be emotional. No Stoic would ever say, well, you can't have emotions. That's not Stoic. No Stoic would say you can't feel anything. That's not Stoic. But the facts are Stoic. Act in accordance with nature. Act in accordance with the universe. Just the facts, not the rest. The facts are there. The rest is here. And you decide whether what's in here is good or bad. Your decision. If you want to feel bad, then by all means, go down the rabbit hole. I lost my job and it's terrible, it's horrible, I'll never be able to get out, it always happens to me, why doesn't this ever happen to anyone else? I'm always the one who gets picked on, I'm always the one who suffers. That ends now. Forward. Continue to move forward, not backwards. The more you do it, this I tell you from experience, the more you do it, the easier it gets to step out of the darkness and back into the light. And you do it for only one person, yourself. You have to feel good with what you are doing in life. And if that's what you can do, the rest will click into place. Because that too is the way of the universe. I hope this was useful. Let me know if this is a technique that works for you. And that's it. I will gladly see you later. Bye-bye.